This is the perfect moment for the Academy of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists and me as the chief instructor to welcome all of you, especially to the long COVID, post COVID, or the 2020 version 2.0, especially a special mention to all the people who have again started washing hands and also who have again started using the face masks in the public, and of course the many people who are actually thinking about getting the vaccination for the second dose. Because we always think we taken the first dose, we are immune, okay, corona cannot do anything to me. And there have been variants in the virus genome across the globe, and we saw delta plus, nothing happened, okay, India was fine. Now we are hearing that the Omicron, which is almost now in 68 plus countries, so it's not an ordinary thing now anymore. And of course the experts and the virologists have their unique way of describing that how this virus is really a breakthrough virus. That means in double dose vaccinated individuals, how this virus can affect. Of course, we are not yet getting the data on the deaths. But of course, the Europe, many of the countries have enforced a full lockdown. And we are actually cornered now into the extremes of experiences as in part of humanity, that this variant is going to take the 2022 away from all of us. Of course, in a different dimension, but we should be prepared. And don't think that I am talking something negative, but what's important is to be ensuring that not only that we are safe, our safety is the safety of everyone around us. At the same way, when it comes to knowledge, our betterment should always be the betterment of everyone around us. It's very, very important for us to realize this fact that you can always learn something better only when you teach others or share your knowledge with others. So in this dimension, and of course in the series of successful courses throughout the 2021, and we are concluding the 2021 with the cranial osteomanual course. You might have seen the updates on this Facebook page. But we begin the 2022 on the most important aspect of course, the viscerosomatic manual therapy. I wanted to bring the historical perspective into the picture first. Initially, visceral disorders, various conditions. We know that viscera means it is the structures that are inside. So it could be the vascular structures, or it could be the lymphatic. The vascular could be arterial or the venous. And other than that is of course the system wise. You can separate it into a stomatognathia system here in the face or the head or neck, which is for speech, swallowing, and of course the what is called as the breathing. Stomatognathia system. So that is comprises of the respiratory, the masticatory, and of course the articulatory, okay, system. When you see them differently, gastrointestinal system is a separate one, respiratory system is a separate one, and you see that there is hormones are secreted by the endocrine system. So we can influence the endocrine glands, including the thyroid here, or the dual one, the pancreas. Of course, the adrenal also has a dual role. And then you have the urinary system, the male and the female reproductive system. And of course, the rest of the other systems are centered around what is called as the abdominal structures, okay, which are together called as the viscera. And you have a special what is called as mention to this visceral disorders, because the moment we feel that we have a symptoms of a visceral disorder, What we usually do is to go to a physician, a primary care practitioner, registered medical practitioner, ideally. Otherwise, we tend to see whether the symptoms go off itself, and then later we see how well we can get with some medications which are unprescribed. When the symptoms don't what is called as disappear, then we go for the consultation. We might take some treatment, and apparently we feel that the visceral function is actually 50% recovered, and we might stop the medications because we don't actually continue the medications for the full dosage. This is something which is a common thing among everybody, not just in exercises. You see that even a drug prescription, we don't actually follow the full dose. This is a majority. Okay. So what exactly happens? First and foremost, these visceral disorders, usually when a patient tells that having a stomach pain, we immediately tell go to a physician, and then we also tell how is your food habits, anything abnormal. If the patient has come to us with a back pain and also complaining of a gastric ulcer, for example, a common man who is a relative to that patient at home will tell that your back pain is because of the gastric pain, okay, because you have a stomach problem, so that back pain is actually a visceral referred pain. That means the cause is not in the back, it is referred from the visceral structure of stomach or the intestines. So automatically what is assumed actually is the picture of a somatic problem which is only in the lumbar spine. It could be articular, myofascial or neural, including the skeletal, versus the visceral. And we jump into the conclusion that it's a visceral disorder. If in a clinical scenario, patient comes to us with a back pain as to a physical therapist, with the back pain and also a history of discomfort and gastric ulcer repeatedly, we tend to relate that to the common aspect of mental stress. Because we know that ulcer is to do with irregularity in the timings or the type of food. And then we always advise the subject that maybe because of your stress, you are getting the gastric ulcers, peptic ulcers. So you should continue with the relaxation programs, whichever helps. And then we treat only the lumbar spine. In the lumbar spine, when we examine, sometimes we may not get a very convincing picture that this is the disorder. We might find a myofascial tenderness, but it is not the one which is exactly the patient's symptom. And the patient keeps on telling you that the visceral symptom is more than the back pain. Then we tend to think that maybe it's a red flag. Listen to that word, red flag. So, because that is the one which is described in manual therapy literature, that a patient with a visceral disorder is contraindicated for manual therapy. Of course, the misnomer or the miscommunication across the generations is the misperceptions that manual therapy means only the articular techniques. So that means you're giving spinal mobilization or manipulation. Or maybe for the little more trained individuals, they will think about the myofascial techniques. Much more advanced trained individuals or therapists only will think about the neural mobilization or the neural techniques. So gone are those days, and the majority of the therapists will assume that it's a red flag. And immediately what is done is get your peptic ulcer treated, get it cured, after that you come for therapy for the low back pain. If the low back pain do not go by the peptic ulcer treatment. So that means you are keeping what is called as a treatment-based diagnosis. Okay. Of course, you are sending it to the physician, and the physician tells that it is a visceral disorder. You don't have to go to a physical therapist because they are for the musculoskeletal system. Because it's their perspective that they know that orthopedicians, originally they were involved in establishing the physiotherapy as a profession under their direction and supervision. So physiotherapy is assumed only as orthopedic. And the growth of the evidence also, you see disproportionately increased orthopedic evidence compared to neurological or cardiopulmonary branches in physical therapy, or even the women's health or the pediatrics or the ergonomics. So remember that because of all these variables, people assume that you don't have a musculoskeletal problem, so why to go to a physical therapist, right? In their perspective, they are correct. Patients are given medications, again the same history repeats. Incomplete medications, symptoms partially recovered, patient stops. Then the disorder becomes chronic. You know what is chronic means? It becomes a recurrent one, okay, not a persistent one. If you don't take a treatment and you are just getting on with your own measures, the first disorder will be mild and then again it will come back, again mild, again it will come back, so it will be like persistent, a visceral disorder. If you have taken a treatment which is an inadequate treatment, it will go off. Again after 2-3 months you will get the symptoms, or it may be seasonal. So it can be to do with a specific combination of diet with lifestyle and stress. So people will have what is called as, I'm not getting out of this problem. This is about the visceral side. You think that all these visceral organs in the body, they are just floating in the air inside the body? No. That means what makes them to be in place? Are they directly attached to the bones inside? No. Then what is that one structure which is actually holding all these visceral organs inside the body? There are a lot of fluids. Of course, in abdomen we have fluids, we have gases. So there are a lot of things to do. Actually, liquid and gases, both are fluids. They can make the organs to float. But when we run, when we are jumping, how is the visceral organs are maintained in their particular position? Then our thinking should go back to the anatomical, which is the mechanical properties of the viscera. Because as I was highlighting that all our functional activities, the viscera is also challenged to move. Okay, I do a lateral flexion, there is a pressure here, and the viscera is challenged to move to the other side. I do a forward flexion, the viscera is definitely given compressive force, it can go proximal or it can go posterior. Every movement of the body, even side lying versus supine lying, the viscera has to shift. This is the mechanical properties of the viscera. And of course, don't forget, all the visceral organs are lined by the fascia. The peritoneum is a fascia. So parietal and the various visceral layers, and you have a peritoneal fluid as the lubricant for the movement, and also to avoid friction between two organs. If there is a liver, there is a hypertrophy, for example, it should not affect the other adjacent pancreas or the gallbladder or even the diaphragm. So that means there has to be a fluid lubricant between these two. So that is the peritoneal fluid. Not only that, the fascia is there to protect all these structures, the fascia actually holds these structures, suspends these structures like a hammock. You know a hammock? The one which the beach models, they lie down, okay, and hanging in the tree, okay, one tree, another tree, and then hanging, and in between they lie down. Hammock. Same like that. There are ligaments around every visceral organs, and they are multidimensional, okay, 3D, 4D dimension you have to see. And these ligaments are actually the fascia only. In fact, all the ligaments of the human body are modified deep fascia. So the peritoneum with the ligaments of each and every structure has ligaments. So they can be attached to another structure with a ligament. They are also suspended to the corners of the peritoneum with the ligaments. Some structures are even attached to the diaphragm, whichever below the diaphragm is. You talk about the kidneys, they have the ligaments which is attached to the lumbar spine, the vertebra itself. So it means that these ligaments are needed for the stability of the visceral structures, and of course they can't be just fixing the visceral structures into one position, because we change position they should adapt. So they are also important for mobility of the viscera. So that means there are two integral functions of the visceral organs. One is the mobility and the other one is the motility. If, for example, the kidney has to move medially, laterally, superiorly, anteriorly or posteriorly, it is actually the mobility, because it's mechanical. But the physiologically, the blood is coming through the renal artery and then it is getting into glomerular filtration and then the formation of urine, what is called as the preliminary version of the filtrate. Okay, that kind of a physiological activity is called as the motility. That physiological activity creates a movement in the kidney. Okay, because of the blood that is rushing in and because of the renal vein that is taking out the deoxygenated blood, and of course it's an excretory system. Okay, so it has to eliminate the waste products. So all these functional activities of every organ creates a movement, but that movement is actually an inherent motion. It may be again different between individual to individual. It depends upon how much that organ is active. I might have a very right side kidney being more active than the left. Someone else might have the spleen being more active than the liver. So remember that it is about even the large intestines. Even some may have the transverse colon being more active than the ascending, or being the descending or the sigmoid colon in the large intestine itself. We cannot do a colonoscopy, we cannot do a gastroscopy, we cannot do endoscopy or diagnostic ultrasound to the abdomen to keep diagnosing everything. But at least for the functional aspects, of course. But when it comes to the mechanical aspects, if you have a thorough understanding of the attachments of the organs with the related organs, and of course the ligaments and the fascial connections, definitely we can influence the mechanics of the visceral organ, and at the same time this mechanics, if it is restored, the functions of the viscera may also get improved. I am not telling that visceral disorder is not a red flag. What I am trying to tell is a pure visceral disorder without a somatic dysfunction. That means there is no myofascial tenderness, there is no abnormal posture in the patient because of the visceral disorder, and there is no what is kind of a mechanical response. That means patient having an ulcer, but the ulcer is better when the patient is actually lying down rather than sitting. So what does this convey? Lying and sitting is actually a mechanical stress. Don't think that it is physiological. Okay? And the same way, sitting versus standing. So there again, its mechanical stress is more because the gravity effect is more in standing. So these kind of what we have as neck pain and back pain, which comes after a posture or after an activity, same like that, if the subjects are having visceral symptoms after an abnormal posture or an abnormal activity, remember that there is something a link with the somatic system, which is the musculoskeletal, of course. Link is always there, but the dysfunction is getting linked. Okay, that is what is important here. That is when this connection comes, the viscerosomatic. That means the visceral dysfunction is leading to a somatic maladaptation. Coming to all these jargons, I'll tell you the simplest things, because AIOMPT always makes things simple. Imagine an obese individual who has a big tummy. Rarely you will see an obese individual who is sitting erect with an upright posture. So what do they usually do? They actually slouch, support the chest on the tummy, and the spine goes into a kyphosis supported on the tummy. So what do you actually expect for the visceral contents? They are migrated distally because of the compression. Anterior is, of course, the abdomen is bulging. That's why people want to work out and they want to reduce the abdomen. But remember that there is a displacement of the visceral organs to superior-inferiorly. And this displacement, an inferior displacement for example, creates the laxity of the ligaments so that the organs become hypermobile inside the abdomen, and the subject lies down supine, the organs go too much superior because the ligaments are not in their normal length, and the patient feels breathless because they are compressing on the diaphragm. So an obese individual who is actually having what is called as this orthonia, the breathlessness on lying down, it's a common symptom. Usually we'll tell, lie down in side lying, don't lie down supine. It's not a treatment. You have to see why the patient is getting breathless. Is it the liver? Is it the stomach? Which is the structure which is actually creating that mechanical effect on the diaphragm? And can we actually offload that structure so that the patient becomes functionally better, and subsequently, even if they go for an aerobic conditioning program, can have an easier ability to actually reduce the abdomen because the organs are right in its place. It's easy to activate the transverse abdominis. Because in the obese individuals, in case you are giving a motor control retraining or the Pilates or whichever, when they activate that, they are not able to activate the transverse abdominis because the viscera is pushing. How can you actually do the activation against the counter force of the viscera? So the visceral organs should be treated. Although there is not a major visceral symptom, the somatic symptom is pulmonary, which is breathlessness. A somatic symptom can be with the posture and it's causing the back pain, or to do with the fitness, or with the musculoskeletal activation, transverse abdominis, or even it could be the inferior migration of these visceral organs in an obese individual will cause load on the pelvic floor, leading to an incontinence. Okay, so the stress incontinence. Okay, so remember that people may have symptoms which is of the same visceral organs. We know that it is the liver dysfunction or it is the stomach dysfunction, but still it can lead to incontinence in the patient. So how will we actually get the picture next moving? Very simple. Physical therapists are known to be experts in the management of somatic conditions. Shoulder, for example, because shoulder is very closely related to the trunk. Extremities and also the neck and the low back. Neck and low back directly related to the visceral organs. I don't think anybody has a doubt that thoracic outlet or the apex of the lung or the artery and the vein, the carotid, the jugular, the thyroid or the trachea or the esophagus, definitely they can influence the neck. Okay, so that everyone will agree. But when it comes to shoulder, you have a restricted range of shoulder, or you have what is called as an impingement, which is during particular contractions, particular positions. Impingement is happening, end range pain or painful arc. That means there is some kind of an imbalance in the forces. That is why the patient is complaining of altered activity of this musculotendinous junctions, leading to strain of them with the scarring and then getting friction under the bony prominence or above the bony prominence, leading to an impingement sign being positive. So in this imbalance, we all know that fascia is a single structure in the human body. Fascia is of course like this room, and the objects that are kept in the room, that is what is the muscles or the blood vessels. So the fascia of visceral fascia versus the muscular fascia, or the ligament and the tendon are also fascia. Myocardium, the pericardium is a fascia. And of course the periosteum of every bone is fascia. And the more interesting is even the meninges is the fascia. So what is even the artery which is lined with the tunica adventitia, the outermost layer of the artery, and the vein, that is also fascia. So name any structure that do not have a fascia in human body, it cannot. Every structure has the fascia, the organs. Okay. So it can easily transmit the forces. How do I actually see this effect on a patient? A patient has a restricted shoulder motion or has having a muscle imbalance, but I see that the patient can lift the arm more easily in supine, not able to lift in the sitting position. Okay, so in the sitting position the subject is not able to lift the arm, it's like this. Okay, whereas in supine position it is going to 140 degrees. Of course, biomechanically you can always think that in sitting the core muscles are working, in sitting the scapular muscles are challenged, so the movement is not coming in sitting. Supine, the scapula is stabilized, so the movement is coming more. We always think only what we actually know. We are not thinking beyond what we know. What is called as thinking outside the box. It should be, as of course, based upon the evaluation. You have to check it on the patient and then decide that this is actually influencing or not. Okay. How do you do that? A very simple one. Just push the fascia of the chest wall, okay, towards the shoulder. In the sitting only. If the range improves, it is nothing to do with the scapular stability. It is nothing to do with the core activation. It is only a myofascial restriction. Right? And the next one comes. This is about somatic. It's the exterior of the fascia above the chest wall. The next comes, go to the border of the rib. Go inside the ribs, below the ribs, and then go for the release. The release can be for the diaphragm or release can be for the ligaments that is attached to the stomach. After this, a mild pressure, you are not going to actually push through so much. Okay. After the pressure on the visceral system, recheck and see that whether range is improved. Because the same facial, what is called as integrity of the tension, called as tensegrity in osteopathy. Osteopathy is basically the transmission of tension and distribution of tension and an adaptation towards the tensile forces among various systems and organs and different types of fascia. So facial tensegrity. So it could be a somatic fascia which is restricting the shoulder movement, or it is the visceral fascia which was restricting. If the patient is getting benefited substantially, you can either do either way. First you do the physical examination routinely as per David Maggie. Do the examination for 2-3 days. And after that you, what is called as glide, you examine, it's normal. And you know articular is ruled out. You are giving resisted isometric test, all the things, everything, it is again equal, no, not much pain. And then neural, of course, if you are thinking of impingement in the anterior aspect of the shoulder, subcoracoid impingement, you can examine the median nerve neurodynamics. Your subacromial impingements, you can examine the ulnar nerve or the radial, okay, with the frozen shoulder it comes, radial nerve. So you can do multiple things and you find that there is no abnormality, then you can examine the regional interdependence and then you can go for facial or other interventions. That's a roundabout way. How to identify, in this particular example, a specific example, how to identify that visceral is definitely a dysfunction. Of course, think of multiple dimensions. Subject is telling that in supine I can lift the arm. That means the organ is going superiorly, visceral organs, then he is able to lift the arm. Which is not there in the sitting where the organs are actually coming down towards gravity when he is sitting. So the fascia is being pulled. It's just a parallel thinking process. There's nothing additional which you need to know. But to have a very, very organized thinking process, you need to know the anatomy of the viscera, of course, not the internal but the mechanical perspective of anatomy. And of course, the influence of each and every visceral structures to various forces. So that means the mobility of the viscera and their influence on the motility. Motility of the viscera is by very simple, don't give any forces, just to palpate the viscera and just to feel how the viscera is actually talking to you. What do you mean by that is, in the normal functional resting position, how the viscera is slowly, which is moving as oscillations. Okay? Every visceral organ has this. Don't think that only if a girl is pregnant, then fetus will be moving inside. Okay? That is very obvious movements. But if you see these movements, of course they are very minimal, but they are much larger than the cranial or the primary respiratory mechanisms, okay, in cranial osteopathy. More than that, definitely these are very easy to find, this visceral motility. This is called as the therapeutic listening. You can do that listening anywhere in the body. Okay, you can do it for eyes, you can do it for brain, you can do it for respiration, you can do it for any of the functions of the body. But what's important here is to note that therapy can address the mechanical dysfunctions of the viscera. Okay? We are not telling that you are curing the ulcer, but at least the chronic adaptive, the facial mismatch or the ligaments adhesion versus laxity, if that could be given an initial force so that the body's homeostasis then takes over and automatically the subject is going to progress towards a positive recovery, then it must be worth. The most important thing is make it interdisciplinary. Keep the physician into confidence, be it a gastroenterologist or be it a urologist or be it what is called as the endocrinologist, okay, whomever might come, or even the nephrologist. But make sure that the physician is kept in confidence and discussions and of course validations, because you are giving a treatment on the viscera means make sure to measure pre and post the visceral functions. Don't take a photograph and say this is pre-treatment, post-treatment. Okay? Because one fact I'll tell you, subject is lifting till here. You are asking the patient to lift. Okay? This is your shoulder dysfunction subject has. Anybody who is having a shoulder dysfunction will have lack of motivation. So the patient will lift only till here, first time. Because everybody comes, every doctor comes and tells, lift your shoulder, lift your shoulder, lift your shoulder. So again this therapist is also telling me lift the shoulder. Okay, so he tells. He will think that and he will do like this. If another senior therapist, experienced therapist for example, more lively, more energetic therapist comes and then tells, Senthil, lift your shoulder, he will lift more. It's automatic. It's just by the verbal cueing or by the dynamicity of the instructions, patient's motivation will increase and automatically movement will improve. So don't take a photograph pre-treatment and then post-treatment, one session. I gave dry needling or I gave any advanced myofascial techniques. Patient improved 20 degrees. Come on, wake up. It should be a comprehensive improvement. For all those people who are sharing such kind of pictures of pre-post of the patients in the Facebook, please explain what are the assessment findings in that patient. How did you decide what technique you have given as a treatment? Why not the other techniques? What is the evidence? And plus, other than this improvement what you saw in the photograph, the range of motion, what all you have seen as additional findings? Be a clinician, don't be a photographer. I know I have been a photographer in many of the events and I have been taking pictures for many people. But when it comes to patient and then pictures, also take the pictures technically lined properly, alignment properly. If you are showing my shoulder range of motion, my shoulder axis to be at the center of the camera. And the vertical line should be margin of the camera, the vertical margin. And the flooring horizontal one should be the horizontal margin of the camera. Everything should be aligned. Then you take a picture. Don't just take a picture because you want to share it with the whole world on your success. What I am trying to tell is, the best moments in life which you learn is not during your success, it is during your failures. So remember, the deeper you analyze your success, more better you will become. Don't be happy with the outcome. Be inquisitive on what is the process that created this. Whether it's a psychological effect, yes, let the placebo be there, no problem, it's most welcome. All of us have the brain and the mind, definitely it will play a huge part. Without the mind, there is nothing that can happen in the body. So placebo you cannot eliminate. Let the placebo be there, utilize the placebo judiciously, no problem. At the same time, when it comes to any kind of a disorder which is commonly in clinical practice, our own mechanical low back pain which you are treating as a physical therapist also, we need to ask some questions which will actually alert us that whether the patient had a visceral dysfunction on and off. Patient may not have related because they don't have that knowledge. If a therapist is not able to relate, don't tell that I don't have the knowledge. Because the world, you know, around you, so much of developments and advancements are happening. All those 7,300 plus followers on the Facebook, you all know what AYMPT is doing. The extent of the education and the knowledge empowerment that is done across the globe. So it's now high time that we upgrade ourselves. And I also listened to physical therapists earlier who were telling that, sir, fully lockdown is there. Very difficult, sir, how to enroll in courses. In between, there was no lockdown now for at least 6 months. But remember that we don't know the situation in 2022. At the same time, your skill set should always be multiplying with every challenging situation in life. Because the challenges are brought just to make you better as a person, as a professional. If there are no challenges, none of us will become better. So remember this. And the challenges show us also who are all the better people around me. So make sure that be as a better physical therapist. Even if you think you are the best also should become bester. Being the best is not the end of the journey. Being the best is just the beginning of the journey. And ensure that you become a great by making all your patients better, all your students best. Then you are actually doing a sustainable, what is called as success. That is, you are living success. You are not just working for success or living for success. Your life itself is success. So, I take this opportunity that, and I also appreciate the presence of the senior core committee members here when I am live here on Facebook. Ritu ma'am and Darshana, they are always there in all the master classes. Ajay sir joined recently in our core committee. Dr. Udaymala, again cardiopulmonary. She is also in the core committee. Midunil is from Sri Lanka and he has joined the CMT practitioner and he completed. So for the few people who are watching, definitely you can put your inputs on any queries. Remember that the course Viscerosomatic Manual Therapy has 25 master classes, minimum 2 hours, has anatomy bonus master classes, and of course the full certification of Viscerosomatic Manual Therapy specialist. And VSMT, the course begins from January, the new year, and it goes on till February, the Valentine's Day must be, okay. And enrollment, all of you, as you know, that it's only through the WhatsApp, which is my number, that is the +91 80599 34234. So make your step and let this step be a way for propulsion into the future, the 2022, and also ensure that there are many courses available with the AOMPT, which is including the fellowships in ortho, sports, and also in the neuro. For people with cardiopulmonary specialty also, there are thoracic manual therapy specialists and also the pulmo manual therapy courses. So please feel free to take the videos. And remember that the December always till the 31st will be the best time to purchase any of the previous courses because you get huge discounts. So do not miss it. VSMT enrollment, the super early bird has expired and the early bird fee category is going on. So kindly inquire with me about the fees for member versus non-members, or even the core committee members versus the fellowship members. So do not miss this course. This is going to empower you multidimensionally. How this is different from visceral osteopathy? Because there they are considering the visceral primary disorder. Okay, so that means the viscera is the primary disorder and you treat for the visceral symptoms. But what I am talking in viscerosomatic is the somatic symptoms are present in the patient. So either visceral primary leading to a somatic or only a somatic disorder with a visceral dysfunction. No symptom, but there is a dysfunction. Still you can use this. Because we see that transverse abdominis activation is not happening. You do a visceral technique, you do a lift for the intestines, for example, and after that if the subject can activate the transverse abdominis, it's worth it. After a gallbladder release, if the subject can lift the right shoulder better, there is no gallbladder symptoms. That means the facial is the interconnection between the visceral and the somatic fascia. We can evaluate this also, whether these patients will be benefited with the visceral techniques or not. Remember, in AOMPT is always the patient-centered approach and problem-oriented reasoning. So you can easily find out whether this particular patient needs the release of the gallbladder. Don't think that it's a referred pain from the gallbladder to the right shoulder, then only I'll treat the gallbladder. No. Even in a shoulder restriction on the dominant side or the right side, definitely you can go for gallbladder techniques in patients who show some abnormalities on manual examination of the gallbladder in different positions of the arm. And you palpate the gallbladder and see for the mobility and the motility. Then definitely you know that arm positions are changing the gallbladder mechanically. Definitely you influence the gallbladder, arm functions will improve. Every thinking behind all these innovative courses that are provided by the AOMPT, remember that it's to strengthen the domain of physical therapy. So that's why the word therapy comes. So remember that this is an indigenous technique which is developed by a physical therapist for physical therapists. Of course, you can parallelly get trained in osteopathy, you can get trained in any of the other professions. But remember that the foundation knowledge in the viscerosomatic manual therapy is the visceral biomechanics. So that is where you are actually applying the physical therapy core knowledge into the clinical outcomes. So it's always a very, very important step that in 2022 that you can take. So as a chief instructor, of course, I am the person who is delivering the course. So it's my definite pleasure to invite all of you to join the course and make sure that you are part of the AOMPT, whether you are a member just by doing the course or by doing the fellowship and getting into the core committee, or you are actually doing what is called as a work for positivity, live for knowledge. So it's always great to see that we see a lot of positive feedback people are putting in the comments. But remember that the course always has much deeper insights to provide, and it will be useful for women's health because pelvic floor, and also the reproductive organs, the visceral techniques, which would be very, very useful in any of the abdominal conditions, and of course including the sexual dysfunctions and a lot of things. So remember that it is a real future. Now the majority of the population is going to assisted reproduction and technologies, and they are not able to have a successful normal delivery. So a lot of problems. So remember that we have an option to help the patients and make the world a better place for the people who are alive, who are destined to be alive after the coronavirus. These people have a bigger responsibility for the other people, children who are growing up for the future. And we should ensure that we can give a better world to them. So take care of the environment, take care of the universal precautions and the advisory by the respective governments of the countries, and make sure that wisdom is the light and ignorance is darkness. So empower everyone, enlighten everyone with your smiles, enjoy the evening and enjoy this December 2021. Good luck to you all, and wishing you the best to be the viscerosomatic manual therapy specialist from the AOMPT.